Alright, in this video tutorial, I'm going to show you how to use Blender's 2.8 particle system to create a school of fish following a leader like this video that you are seeing right now. So let's get started. Okay, so you can see here I've got a particle system where the fish is coming out from a single vertex and it is following this icosphere object here. Alright, so I'm going to show you how to set up the particle system to achieve this effect. I'm going to reset the scene. Okay, and then I'm going to modify the default cube into a fish. So first select the cube, then press tab to edit, press S to scale and X to scale along the x-axis, then press S, Y to scale it along the y-axis. Then press Ctrl R to give it a couple of edge loops, and then press Alt Z to go to X-ray mode. Select the ends of the vertices by dragging a box over them. Just left mouse click and drag. SZ to scale it down in the Z-axis. Then I'm going to select this portion of vertices, then press SZ to scale it down to form the tail. I'm going to press Ctrl R and then insert an edge loop across the center like so. Select this group of vertices, press SX to flatten it. Select this one as well, SX to flatten it. And then we have our fish. Let's give it some body. So let's select these group of vertices, SX to flatten up the fish. Now you can apply some subdivision by pressing Ctrl 3. Okay, sorry, Ctrl 3 is my timer here. Okay, because I activated the zoom in my zoom it. So if you can press Ctrl 3 on your side, right, to subdivide it, or you can add a modifier subdivision surface to subdivide it 3 times to give it a much rounded surface. Right, so I'm going to right mouse click and shade it smooth. Alt Z to go back to solid state. Okay, so you can refine the fish further by adding a couple more edge loops if you want it to look a little bit better. Okay, so I think this will be good enough for our fish, and I'm going to put it aside, G, X, and put it aside. Now let's create a particle source where the particle can emanate from. So I'm going to create a single vertex. Now to enable the single vertex object, you have to go to the preferences, edit preferences, go to add-ons, add-on tab, and then look for extra and enable your extra objects. Right, so when this is enabled, when you press Shift A, go to mesh, you should be able to create a single add single vertex. Now you can create a simple plane for the particles to emit as well. Okay, but I want my fish particles to come out one at a time from single source. So with the particles selected, make sure you get out to object mode, or you can just simply press tab to toggle to object mode. Then click on the particle tab. Let's give it a particle system. Alright, so now it is an emitter, and if you hit playback, you'll notice that it will start to drop all these particles in a stream. Now we do not need so many particles. I'm going to reduce it down to just 100 particles. And you can, if you play back again, if you rewind the timeline and then just hit playback again, you can see that there's much less particles coming out. Now you can play with these numbers like I see to give you a random value. Frame start, I'm gonna have it start at minus 250 frames. So that means the particle will actually start to come out before the start of this timeline here at 0. And at the end, I want it to end at maybe at 500. Beyond, okay, beyond the timeline. Lifetime, I'm going to give the fish a long lifetime. I'm going to give it like a maybe 5,000, sorry, 1,000 frames. Okay, 1,000 frames lifetime. Lifetime randomness, you can just pick a random number. And then let's move on to the next portion. Okay, so right now is behaving, the particles are behaving in the Newtonian physics behavior. That means they follow the rules of gravity and so on. So we want to change the particles to behave like as if it is alive. All right. So especially in the movement. So go over to the physics tab here. Change the physics type to BOIDS, and then reduce the mass down to what you think the mass of a single fish would be. I'm going to give it about 0.2 kilograms, about 200 grams for a single fish. And the particles, I'm going to change the render type and open up the render and change it into a object type. I'm going to scroll down and then use the instance object, use the eyedropper tool, click on it and click on the object that you want to be the fish. And right now you can see every particle that comes out from the vertex will be a fish. Okay, and sometimes it needs to reset a bit of time, but you can see that the particle source is now a fish and it's coming out randomly. I'm going to keep the main fish. Now select the main fish and hide it. You can press H to hide it. Alright, so let's create the swarm of fish. Okay, now select the particle of the fish. Okay, select the vertex. Okay, sometimes if you click directly on the screen here, the particle settings will not come out, so you can go to the outliner and then just click on it. Now to make it easy for us, I'm going to rename the vertex by double clicking on it. I'm going to call it fish particle source. The cube is a fish, so I'm going to call it fish model. Right, and then fish particle source, so this is much clearer. And now you can see that just now you can see a bunch of fish bunching up together, but let's go and change its movement behavior. So go to the movement tab, and we're just gonna allow flight. We're gonna bump up the airspeed, and minimum airspeed, just give it a little bit, and plus air personal space, maybe just give it a little bit more. And you'll notice that it still doesn't, the fish doesn't want to separate out, so we have to change the BOID brain, just give it some brain behavior. So to do that, under the BOID brain, you can see that it already has a separate and a flock behavior, and we're going to add a couple more behaviors. We're going to add a avoid collision, and I want to enable the, under the avoid collision, enable the BOIDS so that it will not collide onto itself. And all these rule evaluation, we're going to set everything as default for fuzzy, and then we're going to add one more called follow the leader. And right now we don't have a leader, we have to create a new leader. So I'm going to press Shift A, and I'm going to create a icosphere. I'm going to reduce the size of this icosphere, and then I'm going to reduce the number of subdivisions. Okay, and I'm going to just position it at a different location. And then this icosphere, I'm going to rename it as the leader. And for the leader, I have to tell the particles that this is the leader that it needs to follow. So I'm going to click on the fish particle source again in the outliner, and scroll down until you find the follow leader properties in the BOID brain, and then use the eyedropper and click on the leader. Okay, so you can click on play and then see what happens. And now you can see the fish particles are starting to have a swarming behavior, and it is crowding around the leader. Okay, so if I move the leader around, and you can see the fish will gradually want to start to follow the leader. Okay, so now the fishes are moving a little bit slow, so I want to increase the speed a little bit. So let's go back to the fish particle and let's change the velocity. So I'm going to increase the air velocity, and then maybe the maximum air angular velocity, I'm going to bring it down a little bit. Okay, and then in the behavior, I'm going to put the follow leader behavior as the #1 priority. So I'm going to select the follow leader, and then I'm going to move it up the stack. So that means the first thing that the fish particles will do is they have to follow the leader. Now, if you notice that your fish tend to bunch up together, right, there are other settings that you can change to keep them separated. And one of the values I find that will keep them from bunching together is to reduce the maximum air angular velocity. Okay, and you can try to increase the maximum air acceleration. Basically play with these sliders, right, to get a form of a much more natural separation. Okay, now the maximum airspeed is I think a little bit too aggressive, so let's just bring it down. Okay, and also the personal airspace, I can increase it so that, again, just try to keep the particles separate out a little bit. Now to give the fish movement a little bit more natural, almost like a twitchier effect, you can go over to the miscellaneous and increase the banking, pitch, and the height values. okay, so that the movement of the fish will be a little bit more random. Okay, so essentially that's how you create a school of fish. And now if you want to animate your leader, okay, this is how you do it. Right, so turn on the auto key. Right, turn on the auto key. So I'm gonna turn on the auto key, and with the leader selected, I'm gonna wait for the timeline to start to 0 again, and then I'll start to move my mouse. Okay, you're gonna press G and start to move your mouse, and then as you move, you'll notice that the keys are being generated based on my mouse movement, and then you can see the fish particles will start to follow my movement. And if it continues, you will just start to override. Okay, right now I think it will not override because it goes through one round. I'm going to turn off my auto key now. Okay, and if you want, you can refine the keys because right now I have way too many keys here. So what I'm going to do is move your cursor over the timeline, press Control Tab to switch over to the graph editor. All right, you can see there are some error keys here. I'm gonna just select and then delete them. All right, and what you can try to do is you can select all the keys and you can apply a function. Right mouse click on it, and then you can try to clean up the keys. Okay, right now these are the F curves. Okay, I can't have the clean values here. Maybe let's try finding the values here. I'm gonna select. Okay, so here are the key values here. There should be a tool that allow me to decimate. Yeah, there you go, decimate. So I'm gonna select all the keys. Okay, and under key, and then I'm gonna decimate the keys using by ratio, and then I'm going to move my mouse left and right until you can see the decimate value here. I'm gonna continue to move it until it's very close to 100%. Okay, this is just to reduce the number of keys for my leader movement. And if you want, you can just manually go in and then just get rid of all those keys, right? Or basically clean away all the keys. Just delete away keys, right, which you think that will cause the uh, leader to twitch. All right, so this is the problem when you use the you want to grab these keys and just delete them. It's just to keep the movement of my leader smooth. Okay, I got this weird set of keys here. Just delete them. Okay, so let's just play back and then see. Now to zoom to fit, you press the home key and press Control Tab again to go back to the playback. And then you can see now the leader is moving in a much smoother fashion because I've reduced the number of keys. So you can see there's some jumpiness around. Okay, you can again go back to the timeline and then try to get rid of those keys that has a lot of sharp peaks. Okay, like this one here, I'm gonna just delete away the keys. Okay, so right now my leader is moving along in a much smoother fashion. I see some bunch of keys here that I don't like. I'm gonna delete away and make sure there are no more sharp points around, and then we are good. So all you need to do right now is to just compose your camera position. Okay, press 0 to go to camera view, and then just move your camera until you get a nice framing. Okay, and then apply some materials, set up some lights, and then hit render, and then you're done. So that is how you set up the fish particles in the particle system in Blender 2.8.